if you want to think about it, contemporary art has been kicking the hornet's nest for a long time, trying to get society, people, thinking about their world in a different way. Kara Walker made the sculpture out of sugar to really, in a lot of different ways, raise the issue of how sugar came to be. It came about through colonialism and slavery. So to make a giant sphinx out of an African-American female is a pretty powerful statement, but it's also a way that we can start kicking that hornet's nest. And a lot of artists have actually been doing this. It goes a long ways back, and it ties into a lot of what builds our visual culture that we live in. So even someone like Richard Hamilton picking a fight with advertising and marketing and all these kind of things like that wasn't even new then, because the things that we eat were marketed to us. We live in this world. And so I think that that's the reason why I'm bringing this up, is because we have to think a little bit more about where we are and how we got here. The fact that our ideas of what it means to be American or things like that were actually a psychological marketing campaign. You see that I'm kind of going back on the timelines? That's another thing that ties into those first four concepts that I was thinking about, is what we really need to also think about is generational shift, generational timelines. There can be 30 years between these criticisms, and yet here we are today in 2018 still talking about the same ideas. So how can we do better? Because if we haven't gotten to it already, then clearly the methods that we're using aren't working. So we need to think about them differently, and I think that a lot of artists are trying to do that exact same thing. They're trying to kick it. They're trying to make it happen. And this is the context that I strive to put myself in, because it's one of the things that keeps me going as an artist, and it's one of the things that keeps my colleagues going, and it's also one of the things that's sort of a zeitgeist, if you will, of a collective of artists working informally, internationally, that are really, at this point, pulling out all the stops, making mushroom clouds out of pots and pans, you name it. Or just showing things as they are. Piles and piles of tires. Things that all affect us, things that we all do. Whether we have a no fracking sticker on our truck or a sign in our front lawn, the fact of the matter is we are using these petroleum-based products. We are thinking about it, we're trying to act against it, but yet our actions are kind of going against our thinking. Sometimes it's a little bit more direct. This is a quote to me that means a lot more relevance, and it really kind of sums up this section that I was talking about with the whole generational thing. Hunter S. Thompson wrote this in the mid-'60s. And I think that, like there was a couple weeks back, New York Times had an article about the 40-year gap. And Anna talked about it in her talk this morning. The 40-year gap between when we had a consensus to actually do something about climate change to where we are now. And I think that Hunter S. Thompson's quote is almost prophetic at this point. This one, you may not know. Peak stuff. We're there. We may have even passed it. And I think that that's kind of what, maybe, I don't know, I'm curious to talk to Woody about it, but this idea of what we can do with our economy, this idea of what an economy and ecology looks like. How are these things going to work? Are we actually going to maintain growth? Or are we going to have to revolutionize our ideas about what growth actually is or what it actually means? Maybe we can't. Maybe the idea of perpetual growth lies against, and I'm kind of being a trickster here, but kind of lies against that idea of having more than one planet, right? Because if we could do perpetual growth, then maybe we'd have a few more planets. How many of us think about the stuff that we do? How many of us think about the things that we do in our daily life? How many of us think about all those different things? How many of us think about what we do with our stuff once we're done with it, when we throw it away? Where does it go? Does it go away? Is there such a thing as a way? Or are we actually just forgetting about it once it's gone? We buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like, right? It's kind of the foundation of consumerism. That's where we're at now in the 21st century. And this is something that I think about a lot, is I think that to a certain degree, the 21st century is really about empowerment. We now stand on the edge of 6,000 years of human civilization. So we've got a lot of history behind us, and we have access to that information. So what are we going to do with that now? Do we want to just repeat the last 40 years? Do we want to repeat the last 100 years? Or are we actually going to try to do something different? Are we actually going to try to have an intellectual and an economic epiphany? Is that possible? Or are we just going to keep doing things the way that we've always done them, and that's it? So to give a little bit more tangible examples of how I interpret all that context that I just gave you and put it into work, I'm going to show you just a few highlights of previous projects so that you kind of understand what I do, which is not even my idea. Bill McDonough patented the name along with his collaborator, but the idea of whole cradle to cradle is sort of a way forward, an ethos, if you will, in terms of managing resources, managing time, but really thinking about this, getting away from the semantics of waste stream and thinking more about everything like we do, like with soil, with food cycles or things like this, that nothing ever goes away, that nothing is ever wasted. Everything kind of goes around and around. And so what does that look like? Well, what it means is that you start doing public art projects thinking about the end before you start. And so when I made this project in France, we spent about a year coordinating with companies that would take the material back when it was done, coordinating with companies that could give us the material that was waste material. All this 3,000 square meters of material was actually waste material from a textile manufacturer, because the way it works, and this is a long story, I won't get all the way into it, but the way it works with industrial manufacturing, once you get to about 3 inches off the bottom of a roll, you have to take it out of the machine, because you'll screw up the whole manufacturing plant, because they start with rolls that are this thick, right? And so once they get down to here, they have to pull it out. And so we were able to get all the material for free, make an exhibition on the river, reacquaint the town with their namesake, with their culture of art, and also inadvertently, not my intention whatsoever, but we also alerted the town to an algae infestation that was happening inside the river due to pig farm infestation. So we all got fungus on our feet and things like that from about 3 months of installation work. And I didn't say anything because I was the expat, I was a foreigner, and all that. But the crew, they complained, and they shut the farmer down. At the end, we recycled it. Laundry bags, totes. One friend made a wedding dress. She's an amazing friend. Again, cradle to cradle, thinking about the end before I start. So while I was doing the computer design for this, I was trying to figure out how I could actually manage the material. I knew it was going to be temporary. I knew I didn't want any waste cuts. I knew that I wanted something to do with it. Let me back up a little bit. The concept that kind of went into that project, this is Michigan, right? Middle of the country, 2 years after the recession. The construction industry was flat out gone, dead. People were still struggling with jobs. People were struggling with what they were going to do next. And so I wanted to make sort of a monument to that, an alpha omega, beginning, end. Yes, there's kind of a religious thing there too, but it's all about that sort of internal questioning thing. That's what I wanted to do. But I also wanted to make sure that we didn't waste any materials. And so while I was designing it, I contacted Habitat for Humanity and asked them if they would be interested in taking a donation to build a house. They were okay with that. But it's just kind of things that you can do. And so this way I didn't waste anything, and it influenced the design as well. So I took all straight 8s, didn't make a single cut, only drilled them 2 or 3 times, and that was it. Then they were able to use it to make a 2-bedroom house. And they actually even offered they de-installed it for me, which was nice. Another way, and these are now, it's complicated. I was really intrigued by Brianne's exhibition, basically, of those artists that are using the rare earth materials, because this is one of the dilemmas that I have. I've used technology a lot to eliminate waste in my practice, because sculptors waste a lot. And the computer allows me to calculate how much material is going to go into it. It allows me to use emerging technology. It allows me to outsource materials. It allows me to outsource fabrication, all these different things. But on the other side of it, I've got a computer in my pocket, or in the home, or elsewhere. And now with the renderings, I may even have to manage a render farm somewhere else off-site. So it just becomes to start to stack up. And I don't know the solution to it. I'm trying to be transparent, actually, and trying to tell you that I have a lot of issue with this too. But from the computer file, we were able to make dress patterns and make an inflatable that went around the world a few times in style. Rolls up to a FedEx tube, 9-foot tall inflatable. I love that piece, but it's dead now. Some of like the plastic stuff, this is kind of a precursor, but just because I know there's might be some environmental minds here. Like whenever I use material that can't be recycled, it generally becomes stuffing for something else. I'll cram it into a cavity, whatever. Other options, again, thinking about waste stream, like thinking about cradle to cradle. And this is really, like, as Karen said, I've been doing it for a few years, but the last couple of years, through a series of different things, I lost my studio and whatever, but what I realized that it was a lot easier was to ship the sculptor rather than the sculpture. And so I can make a 6-foot tall sculpture or whatever and have all the pieces CNC cut by a company in Germany. They get moved to the site in France and I arrive and I put it all together. That's a heck of a lot cheaper and a lot less carbon footprint than making it all in San Francisco, putting it on a container 6 months in advance so I can go around the world and drop it in France. So it's kind of an accounting kind of thing. But it's also, that's the kind of why I gave that introduction too. I have a corporate background. Before I went to art, I worked in the corporate sector for 10 years. If you can believe it, I used to work for Hartford Insurance. What that taught me was that managing inventory, managing accounting, writing letters, writing proposals, all those kind of things like that I learned before I even got into art. And I'm incredibly thankful for that. And that's why I'm not anti-corporate necessarily, because there's some lessons there. And I think we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, basically. If you can believe it, a little story about that piece. I'm doing okay on time. Because Shannon was asking me about this the other day. Technology, right? So I was stuck in Shanghai on a layover between Cambodia and France, and doodling on my phone in a 3D app, I made this form on the phone. Got to a computer actually I went to Poland. Got to a computer in Poland, sliced it up in layers, sent that to a company in San Francisco that then sent the sort of like flat laser cut shapes of bamboo plywood to me in a residency in Wyoming, where I arrived, put them together, and then took it with me to a show in Italy. It sounds weird, but it's kind of like it's kind of a term that I've kind of come up with, which is called cloud-based studio work. It's seeing where the resources are. Like when I launched my studio, what I realized was I was paying thousands of dollars a month in gas, thousands of dollars a month in steel, thousands of dollars a month in electricity. It was just not worth it. And in some of the big cities where you need to be close to market, you might be looking at $12,000 a month in overhead. If I do cloud-based, I'm not doing any of that. I still like to play with organic materials and all that. So sometimes it's just that. But it goes back and forth for me. And I think that for what I do, it's just kind of, I see my brain as a rubber band, and I try to stretch it out as much as I can and go from one thing to the other, because I think that's how we kind of know. And that may sound silly, but that's actually a foundation of, it's called comparative analysis, but that's actually what we do when we think. We look at something and we think about what it is, and we ask ourselves what it could be like. How could it be different? So where does that leave us? Well, I'm going to get to Peony here pretty quick. But before I do that, I need to talk a little bit about plastic, because that's kind of been my focus for the last few projects. And in order to talk about that, I need to talk about World Monuments Fund. I'll just read it. World Monuments Fund is a private nonprofit organization founded in 1965 by individuals concerned about the accelerating destruction of important artistic treasures throughout the world. Now celebrating 50 years, World Monuments Fund has orchestrated over 600 projects in 90 countries. World Monuments Fund sponsors an ongoing program for the conservation of cultural heritage worldwide. Through a series of different conversations, I was invited to do a residency at World Monuments Fund in Cambodia, primarily to talk to their workers that were restoring this temple, Phnom Penh, which is in the Angkor Wat complex, which is in Siem Reap, Cambodia. And World Monuments brought me in because, as some of you may be aware, Southeast Asia, developing world, the equatorial regions, unfortunately, mainly because of the gyres, are inundated with plastic pollution for a number of different reasons, and I'll get into them. But what they were discovering there in Cambodia, the Angkor Wat complex has been supported by about 15 countries and NGOs for, well, since Pol Pot left, so 91, 92. And what they've been trying to do with the plastics is they've been trying to use the workers, use the opportunity of having Khmer workers around as an opportunity to educate and then sort of pollinate that education out. Because education is, in that part of the world, it's for profit. So no one really goes to school. So if you tell people ideas, things like that, through the gossip network, basically, it gets pollinated. So you tell one person, they tell 10, those 10 each tell 10, and so on and so forth. You take it to the 10th power, and you can go around the world. That's the thinking behind it, right? So with Phnom Penh, they're restoring this temple. And it's kind of nuts because they're like cataloging every stone and all this. They're doing some amazing stuff. There's sort of a scale reference for you. But the reason why the plastic pollution was such an issue was, unfortunately, like other parts of the developing world, they used plastic trash as a fire starter. And so at this site, like I said, there's 100 workers, and I'd say about at least half of them are cooking or rewarming their food for lunch, dinner, breakfast, whatever. And they'll start their fire with a plastic bag, whatever. Sometimes the plastic bag that they bought their food in. So they're inhaling all sorts of chemicals and all this kind of stuff like this. And like other parts of the world, they're already starting to see problems. Developmental problems, fertility problems, all these things like this. And unfortunately, there doesn't really exist an infrastructure to manage all this. So again, it kind of came to this idea of, well, what can we do next? Basically what I realized is because these other NGOs and things like that were doing this kind of pedantic, didactic thing, I realized the best thing to do was to lure the audience in with humor. So I wore plastic as a hat. I tried to eat plastic bottles. I tried to eat plastic lighters. I tried to inhale smoke. I did all these things. And of course, I coughed, I gagged, I had dry mouth. It just didn't work. That got the audience of 100 Khmers laughing. And then from there, I was able to go into the other stuff that we already know. But what it created was it created buy-in. Now they were interested. I had basically come to their level instead of talking down to them. And it was phenomenal because, whatever, it's plastic pollution. And we some of us have seen the images, some of us haven't. But it had relevance with the workers, especially once they saw the girl. Which I'm sorry, I had to kind of point out. It's always one of the things that I try to do. Did everyone see the boy? Okay, all right, good. Not all audiences do, and that's just kind of a difference, and it ties into a philosophical thing or intellectual thing. But we tend to hear, especially in the West, we turn a blind eye to plastic pollution, largely because it's a colonial thing. It's a neo-colonialist thing. It's an attitude, but whatever. The fact of the matter is, it's in the food stream. It's everywhere. Fish are eating it. Plankton are eating it. And it's moving up. And so we need to do something about it. With the Khmers, what was phenomenal is that when we started showing them these images, they wanted copies, and we were able to get some funding, and so we printed out a little laminate, because it's the tropics. You got to print out laminated stuff, which is plastic. It was sometimes you just take what you can get, and that's it, because like I said, the theory of pollination, these 100 Khmers are all going to go home. We had a couple of them that were really thankful because one was like, he'd been having this argument with his wife for several years, and she's starting to cook fire at home with plastic, and it's no one's fault. It's a problem of really education. But taking these photos home, he could then show his wife, because there's no internet, and so he could show his wife what's going on with it, that yes, these fish are eating plastic straws, zip ties, caps, all sorts of different things. The problem is now, since we've been using plastic for about the last 100 years, and the last 10 years we've actually produced more plastic than the last 100 years. The problem is now it's everywhere. And what plastic does, unlike other industrial products or other products of modern life, it doesn't break down, it breaks up. So those little pieces that you saw the fish eating, those get smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's why you have a statistic like that, where you got 83% of drinking water being contaminated with microplastics. So the problem is kind of big, and we've all probably heard about it somewhat, but it's just one of those things that I kind of latched onto because we're eating it. It's in our life, it's on our plate. So then the idea became, what could I do about it? Because these other NGOs that I was talking with in Cambodia, they had kind of gone the route, and they had tried to do things, they had tried to work together, and unfortunately an idiosyncrasy of NGOs is they don't always work together, but they couldn't figure out what to do next. And we were getting everything back. And of course, the world's still turning, and so whales are beaching with plastic in their stomachs, all these horrible things that we've already seen. But again, what we weren't covering, what we weren't discovering, was a solution, or a way to actually do what we needed to do to change this horror that we are doing to the environment. And we are part of the environment, but we're not a keystone species. So we're not doing a really good job here. And so the scale of the problem is kind of important. And we kind of need to act. Because it's a reality that we're living in now. People are mining landfills for old material. We're killing life. It's sobering. It's funny because I've been working with plastic for a long time, and I never really understood all the environmental parts of it until just recently, and I can't let go. So, I don't know. Hopefully that goes out there, and hopefully you tell other people, because with a number like that, I mean, it's 2018, and we're 20 years away from there, whatever, and I don't know, whatever. So, one thing that kind of bothers me about this little show that I do is that I kind of lure you in with humor, I lure you in with aesthetics. The real problem with plastics is dioxins. And dioxins are getting transmitted from the lowest animal on the food chain all the way up, because dioxins hitch a ride on plastic. And they do that through a concept called bioaccumulation. And so all of us, whether we're fifth level vegan or not, we're all getting affected by this stuff. And dioxins cause all sorts of cancers. They do all sorts of terrible things, and they're in all of us. So the plastics are just like little hitchhikers. And as much as I've traveled around, I know a few other people that I've talked to have traveled around, we've seen the same thing. We've seen it in the tropics, we've seen it in these places where the gyres are unfortunately congregating. And so then it really does become sort of a neo-colonialist irresponsibility, where we're having our nice first world lives up here in the Northern Hemisphere, and we're not thinking about what the rest of the world is doing. We're buying our products, we're totally acceptive that China can make our products or whatever, and so we're producing all this material, and it's going out there, and I don't know, we need to do something. So what does that mean? So then when I came with all this information back to art, I started thinking more about behavior, because that's really what it has to do with. And so while I was working with the other NGOs there in Cambodia, we came up with an idea to think about things differently. We knew there were the recycling programs, we could do those kind of things, we could do all that, but the conversation that we really started having was this difference between reactive and proactive strategies. Recycling, unfortunately, even someone as good as Dave with precious plastic, at the end of the day, it's actually supporting the plastic industry, because it's recycling it. It's chewing it up, making new things. So if we can get away from that, that's different, right? But proactive is a hard one, because then you actually have to change behavior. And so the idea that I came up with was, well, what if we actually show the public how many drinking bottles they're using per day? I think my estimate's off. And there in Siem Reap, it's a tourist town. There's about during peak season, there's 2,000 tourists that go to Angkor Wat per day. Most of them stay in hotels that give 2 bottles per day for free. And so, kind of extrapolating up, I figured 10,000 was a good number. I think it's probably more than that, But the idea was to sort of make this thing, again, kind of like thinking like that video that, the Charlie Chaplin video. I wanted it to make it both hideous and beautiful at the same time, to get people and actually be surrounded by this plastic and then think about what they were doing with that and think about what their daily actions were doing with that. Another aspect of my process that I've been more aware of is that I'm actually starting to show the backside of things more. And so when I got there, a lot of the 5 NGOs that were on that first one, all 5 of them, they're all good friends, but all 5 of them said that I was not going to find any plastic bottle manufacturer in Siem Reap. I found 3. So this is kind of a myopia thing, right? We all we're in our daily grind, we're in a daily bubble. We don't realize that these things are right next door to us. This manufacturer of plastic bottles is right in the middle of Siem Reap, and no one knows he's even there. So then it kind of dawned on me that it was sort of an extended Venn diagram, if you will, but that these things are all really connected and that we're not, and that's the nature of a relationship, right? Things overlap, right? Worked with a study group from the US Embassy. They came by. We worked with a whole bunch. We worked with some orphanages and things like that. We did a lot of outreach. And that was kind of when we realized, or maybe I realized, but the hardest part was really realizing that it wasn't the Khmers, it was us, it was the expats, as a tourist. And I think we realized that when we took it to the airport and we had it in the arrival section right across from the visas. Like, that's when we realized that all these tourists, they come from the Western Hemisphere, they come from the Northern Hemisphere, whatever, Europe, America, wherever. And they pack everything but their morals. They come from cultures where they know they can use a reusable bottle. They probably have one at home, but that they don't put it in their suitcase. And so they come there and they buy extra bottles that they don't need, that they won't use, and they leave behind. I think that's kind of impolite to dirty someone else's house. I don't know about you guys, but I wasn't raised that way. So, right? So those are the ends of the spectrum, right? We've got plastic pollution and we've got kids that are playing in it. And if we continue to ignore it, then what are we doing to ourselves morally? And this is kind of when I couldn't let go of plastic pollution. This is a new waste management plant there. I'm going to try to speed along a little bit. Here's one thing. So I'm going to get to Peony real quick. I saw this little guy in China on some step farms and things like that. They're using it for everything. They're hauling material, they're hauling produce, they're hauling tools, they're hauling everything, and they're right here. It's an electric vehicle, it charges. It's one of the things that I'm kind of shocked about, is whenever I come home, it's not my quote, but whenever I come home, what I discover, and this is the quote, the future is here, it's not equally distributed. And it's a shock to come home to parts of America, and this is kind of why I wanted to come to Paonia, because I have a lot of respect for it. Half my family's farmers. But I have a lot of respect for what's happened to rural America and this generational gap that we have with the rest of the world. The rest of the world is using electric vehicles to climb the Great Wall, right? And here we're driving trucks with no fracking stickers on the back. It's just sort of a misconnect that I'm not sure I understand, right? So last little bit of plastic project before I get to Paonia. Again, this is one of those things where I realized that I could partner with a lot of different people that may not necessarily get along. Someone said it earlier, but we got all this material. That's a still. That's how bottles are made. That's the inside of a bottle manufacturing plant. We got about 40,000 preforms. And preforms, I think it's on the next slide. Yep, there they are. They're the size of your finger, and they're they're like the second stage, so they're like a nymph. They're the second stage of development for a single-use plastic drinking water bottle, right? And so they start, the first stage is their little plastic nurdles and things like that, the size of rock candy. Then they get formed into these things, and then these things get inflated into your drinking water bottles. But the problem is because of the industrial process, which is totally normal, recalibration and everything like that every week, they wind up throwing out 40,000 of these, maybe 600 pounds per week. They get shredded or recycled or whatever, but it's kind of, again, what did I say about breaking up versus breaking down? Plastic is a degraded material. So at best, these materials, when they get ground up or whatever, they become polar fleece, mostly. That's about all you can get from it. Evian's got a thing going right now, and I'm not sure what it is. I'm trying to find out what it is. They think that they figured out a way to do 100% recycle. I don't think that that's mathematically possible. And there's a reason why empirical formulas are the way they are, but whatever. So Paonia. When I got here, we started thinking a little bit more about what to do, how to do it. As you can probably guess, my work is research-based, and I start with usually the hardest stuff. I think that we kind of have to tell the truth as much as possible, and to ourselves, more than just each other. And so these statistics, and then using the other forms of research, observation, academic, you name it, I came up with these sort of framework, basically, of what I wanted to do. And this was all done externally because we really kind of, as you probably already know, we started this project way back in January, and for Anna and myself, since we were visiting artists, we were working remotely, and so we were kind of trying to do all this from outside, and so doing the best we could, and there it was, plastic waste, just calling me. I don't know whether it's a chicken or the egg kind of thing at this point, but it was like the first 2 days of arrival, I went to the library to check out something or whatever, and I was talking to the clerk, and she told me how she was going to go check out some drip tape, and the first June, I won't go into it because June was kind of a rough month developmentally. We went through 4 different proposals, but it stuck with me. And so we decided, okay, we're going to do plastic. And I realized, then I did the research on it, and I was blown away by it. I had no idea, particularly that third one, that it's just sort of a blind spot. That we can have organic farms that have drip tape, we can have all these different things, and no one's really thinking about it. Like this thing called plastic mulch is just really bizarre to me because trash film or whatever is the absolute worst of plastic film. There's nothing you can do with it, absolutely nothing. It's completely useless. So it just goes to landfill. Shocking things that I kind of discovered. And I kept on thinking about these forms. I kept on thinking what I wanted to do. And I realized that through the framework of Elsewhere's Inspired Art at Work project and all that, and I think someone else said it, but the conversation may not happen today, maybe it'll happen a few months later. And so going back to my concepts, thinking about those, how I could make something that would actually talk about those with, like what you've seen, without normalizing the aesthetic of trash in any way or beautifying the aesthetic. I realized that the best way, and that one too, because all rivers flow to the sea, this plastic thing is not away, it's not somewhere else, it's here. So I went out and I collected the tape, got about 4 farmers to participate, and they were more than happy to give it to me because I think, I don't know what the fees are, but they're paying for landfill or storage or whatever, so they don't want to do it this way, we could do that. Collected about 4 truckloads and made this. And it's a gift. Like I said, it's really all just about presenting the material as it is. I don't want there to be any sort of barrier between people's understanding of it. I don't want them to think, differently about it. Just accept that it's there and that there's this snake in the grass, basically, but there's this lie, and what are we going to do? So it's a gift from me to Paonia, and it's acknowledging all those things you can see there on the screen. But I think that the last sentence is the most important to me. Disposable plastic threatens all life, human and animal, and will be a physical line and a geologic record representing our choices today to generations tomorrow. It's not about us, it's about them. There it is again. This is one of the things that, the reason why it's an Instagram grab. It is one of the things that I discovered from Cambodia is now that we are interconnected through these terribly polluting devices, our audience is different now. And so, I don't know, probably to quote my dad, the wizard's veil is off. We can see behind the curtain. We can see who the wizards are. We can see everything. We're living in a culture of transparency now. There are no lies. There may be too much information. That's a whole other conversation. But these stories get out, and we start changing minds. We start changing hearts. Who knows? I think that it's pretty exciting. I also did a little performance. I think that my exposure with Paonia has been that there's good people here. There's really good people here. Whether I don't care which side of the fence they're on. And I think everyone is trying to just do the thing that they can, and especially the micro farmers, organic farmers that are using drip tape. I don't fault them at all, none whatsoever. I think that they're making a business choice, and I know the numbers on that, and it really is kind of a business choice. It's unfortunate because of our system of economics. But the idea, though, is that we need to do something different. And thankfully, we have been able to, through, I don't know, I'm very close to starting a recycling program. I've been working with Delta County, and we're not ready to announce the start date because we're finishing up some last-minute details, but there is hope on the horizon for at least a reactive strategy. But I think that ultimately what we really need to be thinking about is those questions right there. How can we replace it entirely? Because as someone once said, a smart person solves a problem, a wise person eliminates the problem. I share everything. I've been emailing quite heavily with almost all of Voga, and I've shared this with everybody. I'm sharing it with you. There are options out there. You just have to look. And Delta Plastics, not to toot their horn, but they have been really cooperative, probably because they're making money off it, grinding up the plastic and making trash bags. Fine. But there's someone that is willing to come to Colorado and haul it away if we can just figure it out and put it together. And I think, oh, there we go. So I'm not going to tell you what to do, but there's some pretty obvious candidates. I'm also working on a petition right now with the town of Paonia. Hopefully we can ban plastics at least within the commercial district here. Once we kind of get some stakeholders in it, I think you'll probably see stuff going around, hopefully. It may be after I leave, so maybe I'll be doing it remotely, but there's already a few stakeholders here that are willing to take the torch. So there is stuff happening, and I think we can do it, but it's up to you. You got to do everything else. I don't know, because it's on us now. It's up for, our grandchildren are going to be, asking us why we didn't do something. So I don't know. And I think that's it. On the nose.
I will bring the mic for anyone that might have a question for John Melvin. Anybody? Okay.
Have you had any opportunity to look into the research on mushrooms that are eating plastic? It's been getting me very excited, but I can't find a lot on it. And I even went to the Mushroom Festival and didn't find anyone that was really looking into that right now, but it seems kind of hopeful.
Yes and no. I've researched the mushroom stuff. I've researched the bugs. Again, I don't know everything. I don't know much about the mushroom thing. My apprehension to that is like what I was saying about the whole. Let me get away from this speaker a little bit. My apprehension on that is sort of the whole difference between reactive and proactive strategies, right? And so, there's some end-of-life options for plastic. For example, I'm developing a project in Puerto Rico where we hope to be using plastic plywood. And the reason why it works for that application is because it's a permanent application. We want it to last several hundred years. And so if they're going to grind down reclaimed plastic from a landfill or whatever and then press it into a board, you know what? I'm okay with that. But if it's a mushroom doing that, then what does that do to prevent the manufacturer from continuing to produce it? What does it do to prevent the consumer from buying it? So I don't know. I'm curious about it, and if you know more, then by all means, let's have that conversation. No? What? I don't know. We got two at the same time.
one of the things, I'm a theater artist, so what I do is feel how people are responding and stuff in the room. So I just wanted to put a couple of things out on the table. One is in the world of permaculture, Bill Mollison had a phrase he used to use, interim integrity. And when your heart is breaking and you can't find the solution, it is very important for your human health, so that you stay still spiritually present and strong, is to look for the interim integrity. And I myself very recently moved, and I think of myself as a person who's trying to be careful about all of this. And I live in Boulder County in Colorado, which has one of the oldest, it's called EcoCycle, sophisticated recycling programs in the United States.
Yeah, I know.
And we only have 52% compliance in the city of Boulder with recycling. So, boy, oh boy, it just seems like you solve one problem and then, so behaviorally,
Yeah.
I mean, I have stood in front of the garbage with things in my hands, standing over the garbage going, I can't throw this out. I can't throw this out. And I have no, I'll put it aside and research, and a week will go by, and I still haven't found another way or what to do. So human-wise, it's so important to keep our hearts light enough to keep up the work.
Bet.
So I just want to throw that out,
Yeah.
and I'm sure I'm not the only person that knows this phrase and all that, so I just want to put that out. A few years back, I worked with the University of Colorado Colorado State University in Fort Collins.
Okay.
They have a department of engineers there that is specializing in looking for third world problems to messes we've made. And for what it's worth, one of the things they have is a small, like a Primus stove that will actually burn small plastics and bags in a clean way for overt fuel. Rather than beginning a fire or a char with the plastic, it melts the plastic and then immediately lets it be used as a liquid clean fuel in a stove. So, I mean, maybe we can connect and I can dig out a name or something, but that might be something you might want to share with your compadres in Thailand.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind taking a look at the technology. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Was there somebody else that you see the hand?
You had one here in the front, D.
It seems apparent to me, like, what if we're going to stop using plastics and we need something to replace it with? Like, we still need to eat, yet when we go shopping at the store, everything comes in little plastic containers and whatnot. So, I mean, that's one nice thing about living in a little farming community, is that, you know, when we buy local vegetables and fruit, it doesn't come in a plastic container.
Yeah.
Yet, not everyone has that option like we do locally. And you're traveling and whatnot, and thousands of people that you talk to, has there been much talk about, like, the replacement of, you know, if we're not going to be using plastics, try to steer away from it and not try to encourage, like, just recycling. It's not the answer. We need to move away from it altogether. Has there been, like, any talk among you and your friends, like, what we can do to step away from it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been loads of talk. And actually, the interesting part about it is that a lot of the solutions are actually coming from the developing world. You know, India was one of the first countries to sort of produce a pressed leaf plate for quick lunches and things like that. They're developing a brown rice spoon. So there's a lot of different things like that. But let me just back up a little bit. You know, we functioned perfectly well without plastic 100 years ago. So the whole idea of shrink-wrapped butterleaf lettuce, no, that's completely new. We don't need that. And plenty of other, but you know, we've lived without it for a long time. Again, 6,000 years of civilization, right? So we managed to function. You're right, scale is one of the things that I think about a lot. You know, you know, a 10 million person city, can it actually survive? Probably. I think it just needs to rethink it. And so, like, you take a city like New York or something like that, where you got a bodega on every corner. Well, they just need to sell more fresh produce instead of the bottled, you know, Coke and pop and juice and all that stuff. If they sold more produce, they'd probably be better off, and those kids would actually know what an orange and a potato and lettuce, they'd know all those things, and just put it in a brown paper bag or just carry it the way it is. There's no reason for it. I think that part of it became that, you know, we accepted this change in our culture where supermarkets or whatever was the place to go instead of the neighborhood grocery. You know, like last night in Claire's film, you know, the one member of the Don's family was talking about it. But you know, what was it like? There were 4 markets in Paonia originally. Now there's only 1 or 2. Sorry, you know. But there's that. I think that's the thing that we kind of need to remember is that we've actually been here before. So like, you know, we don't actually need to invent too much. We just need to modify. And I think that for the record, my research, industrially compostable plastics or biodegradable sheet film, stuff like that, it's not really that good. Some of the cornstarch plastics are actually worse. So we just go back to the way it was. Don't wrap the lettuce in plastic. There's no reason for it. Yeah. Oranges have a wrapper.
Hello, and thank you for your presentation. It was very inspiring. But I've spent, since 1990, lived in the Telluride area, and there was a film called Bag It.
Yep.
But anyway, they ban plastic bags in Telluride, so you have to bring your own sack, however you shop, and I think we might want to start doing that here.
It works.
It does work.
Yeah, it's sort of a growth curve, and yeah, Anna and I have been talking about it a lot because Ireland's been really successful in it. My hometown, San Francisco Bay Area, is like darn near 0% right now. 0% trash. And it's like someone had the number 50% or whatever like that. Once you get a recycling program to be supported by the local community, run by the state, because that's just the infrastructure cost that needs to happen. But once you get the numbers above majority, you start seeing a behavior shift. And then you can bring in, we're talking maybe a 5-10 year timeline, but then you can bring in the petitions or whatever that'll ban plastics in the store, that'll ban styrofoams in the restaurant, that'll ban all those disposable cups at the festivals. And then next thing you know, you're like San Francisco, you're like Ireland, you're like Sweden, where you're 0%. You're not producing trash anymore. You're like Sweden because they're doing the incineration thing. You're bringing trash in. So you had a follow-up? Yeah?
There's a lovely company here called Elizabethan, and she constructs all of her clothing out of old T-shirts. It's so cool, but she would be a good source for making bags. Or get the kids in school as an art program to, once the kids start making it, let's recycle our old clothes and get sewing machines going so that the kids can, when they participate in the process, it means so much more.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing up garment remnants. It's an issue that a lot of people kind of overlook, even whether it's cotton or not.
Why keep consuming when we can keep
Just fix it.
reusing? Yeah.
I spend a lot of time in another Colorado county, and until recently, we were able to recycle all of our plastic film, so it was great. So,
what are they doing with it?
I don't know. Well, they're not doing anything with it anymore, and it's just something that made me really sad, and I really want to kind of think about the different ways I might be able to approach that problem, and was wondering what first came to mind for you.
Bottle bricks.
Bottle bricks.
For me, that's the best. One of the things with me for plastic is, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I think we need to start thinking about taking plastic out of the consumer food cycle. Just take it out. And so bottle bricks are, I'll just kind of run through it in case we're not on the same page. But basically, very quickly, I think it's a UN or a Fulbright program. I can't remember who started it, but what happens is you take a plastic drinking bottle, and it's really fun to do with kids. You take plastic film, chip bags, whatever, and take like a chopstick works best, and cram it in there as much as you can and make a competition with the kids. And they get really excited about who can cram the most in there. Basically, you cram all that junk plastic, no cash value whatsoever. You jam it in there as tight as you possibly can, and you have a bottle brick that has a higher R factor than a lot of other products. And then you put it together you can put it together with Adobe, whatever. You run your course, you do your runs, it's fine, same. And it's phenomenal. Everything's sealed inside. If you go Adobe or if you go cement, doesn't matter. But everything's sealed inside of that. And you've got a wall that's, okay, fine, it's gonna be this thick. But it's captured and you're done. That's what I would say.
Right on. Thanks, man.
Cheers. I think Regina has a question. I'm sure she has a really hard question for me.
So I seen in one of your slides there the tires.
Yeah.
And on my reservation, not only do we have an issue with it ourselves, but all the surrounding community likes to make it our problem, which is kind of ironic after seeing the film yesterday. If we make it our problem, I was like, oh, they made it our problem, and they also made it to where we have to make their problem our problem. What do you do with those tires?
I don't know. I'm really disappointed in tires right now because there's, for a while, the industry and society really thought that the Holy Grail, Hail Mary solution was to grind it up and make playground material for kids. That's kind of backfiring now because we're starting to notice that with water and stuff like that, we're starting to see tire particulates going into the storm drains, and I don't need to finish the rest of that story. And so now I don't know. Burning them is no good. Rammed earth is probably the best. Stabilize it, and that's it. It's done. But but what? You're limited at a 1 story, 2 stories. Yeah. 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 So there you go. Thank you, Anna.
Dennis Weaver made a film on that. You can still see it.
Yeah.
It's been around since the late 1980s.
Yeah, I think tires just like the bottle bricks. I think that's take the plastic out, take it out, just get it out of the cycle, and done. Yeah, but it's nice. They're nice structures.
No, they're not ugly. They're lovely.
They're really lovely. You can make them nice. Yeah. I think if you have the internet, right? So you can look at all the millions of different iterations that someone else has tried, and you come up with something better.
And I have. I've done all that research myself
Yeah.
because, ironically, because we're a federally recognized tribe, that just kind of makes us a little easier for the EPA to fine us for the excess.
Yeah, well,
So we were a target, and we're facing some pretty costly fines if we didn't do something with it. So.
Well, yeah. If they'll let you build a house, do it. My only hesitation on that is because of the zoning laws and stuff like that for structures.
That's a reservation.
They don't care. Done. Yeah.
Okay,
it's a crazy world, Regina.
I'm going to wrap it up here, John. Thank you so much.
Thank
Really
you,
appreciate it.
Thank you.